been a quiet off season for the Milwaukee Brewers as far as the trade market and player movement and all that. When is it going to pick up? What do we expect? John Pappadopoulos from ESPN Lacrosse joins me next.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yeah, we've had the non-tender dates and a lot of this stuff going on, the deadline stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary. Not that trade in the middle of the night, nothing like that. Nothing really that popped a great amount of interest so far in the offseason, but I expect business will pick up. How you doing again, everybody? Chuck Freeman here, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return from FanDuel. New customers, you place a $5 bet, you'll get started with $150 deposited in your account just like that. When you win that $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right. My guy John Pappadopoulos. I'm on his show on Mondays during the baseball season on ESPN Lacrosse. Terrific afternoon show, the Sports Lead. He's returning the favor coming on my podcast today. Pop, appreciate you coming on the show.
It's good to be on. The hot stove season is up and running, and you can kind of feel it coming, like you said. No big hits yet, but there's a calm before the storm here, I think.
I wonder if we'll see anything major out of these guys. They're looking for a third baseman. Again, we've had all the deadlines, the non-tenders and all that, but something major on the table.
I don't think it's happening this offseason. I just think this is a year where they're going to try and save some money in a lot of different ways. I know it's same old for Brewer fans, but I don't even know if there's a Rhys Hoskins type of signing, which we had last year. There's always been one or two fairly big ones. A lot's happened though. In terms of looking at it from a business standpoint, which is hard to do as a baseball fan, but a lot's happened as far as where the Brewers are right now. You're talking about a TV deal that's still unsettled, and that's where they get a lot of their money from. That's how they pay the players. Well, when you go to streaming, that money might be a lot less this year. That's unknown at this point. So we've seen other teams, like Chuck, I know the Twins have cut bait on some salary. The Padres went to streaming, and they didn't make as much in streaming as they did from their cable deal. So I think Mark Attanasio, I know Brewer fans don't want to hear this right now, but with the unsettled attitude right now on a TV/streaming deal, I don't think they're going to spend until they know how much money they have to spend. I don't think he wants to pay out of pocket at this point. So to me, this is a year where you talk about the tendered guys. That might be the story for the next month or two. And there are some good players on that list. Aaron Savale is a guy that I think can be the fourth or fifth starter on this team. He was a really good fit. I think Chris Hook was able to work with him on some things and turn in from a good toolsy pitcher to an actual good pitcher this year. I think Savale could be really good. He's kind of a diamond in the rough type guy. He's cheap. He's pretty good. I think they're going to probably tender him today or, hopefully solidify his situation coming up. Trevor McGill's in the same situation. He might be their closer this year. I think they might trade Devin Williams to save even more money and maybe bring more prospects in. So I would start there. I think the one deal you might see, although I don't think it's going to be until after Christmas, is a third baseman. But my gut feeling on the third baseman is that they're going to let the market play out and see who's left in the end and get somebody cheaper. It's a tactical approach. I know fans don't like it, but it's actually a smart approach where if there's a group of 15 to 18, mid-level third baseman, shortstop type guys, let some of them sign for higher prices. Let a few others get signed. You get to January 15th or February 1st, the guys that are left are going to get desperate, and you're going to get them, for a cheaper deal. So I think they're looking – it's a guess, but I think the third baseman will be kind of a 1-year, $6 million prove-it deal for a guy who wants to put up some numbers and knows he's going to get at bats here. And, like an Ahmad Rosario type, a guy who can hit a little bit. And there's 20 guys like that, But I think the approach is going to be you just wait and see who's there at the end, who's most desperate, and play the market smartly and get them to a 1-year prove-it deal.
John, initially I was interested in Alex Bregman. I thought, all right, Alex Bregman, maybe 4 years, 120. Now we're hearing, now we're hearing 300. Not 300 million for him though. I don't know.
No way. That's not worth it.
I don't know who would pay that. Somebody will.
Well, there's a different desperation market in baseball as well, and that includes the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Mets. And what they do, they get desperate in terms of appeasing their fan base and their media who want big stars and big money guys. And whoever doesn't get Juan Soto, whoever doesn't get the very top of the line, then it's like, well, maybe we can go get Bregman at least, and then they're going to overpay for him. So the smartest business people let everybody else overspend first and then get good value. And that's one thing the Brewers have done a good job of. And again, I think that's what they're going to do at third base this year. But Bregman is going to be way out of their price range. And I would actually say, if you're going to spend the money on Bregman, then you might as well sign Adames, because I'd rather have him at roughly the same money.
Yeah, I mean, either way they put it, they're going to have a third baseman, as you said, and they might just go that route. They might get somebody who maybe late in the game, like Rhys Hoskins. Rhys Hoskins was kind of late in the game when they signed him. And I know you mentioned, they don't expect one of those kind of signings, but
they never would have got Hoskins for the money they did had they signed him right away. It would have been much higher than that.
They waited at the end.
You wait till the end, and then the market goes down for the player, and the player gets desperate.
Yeah.
And they realize, there's only 2 teams left that need someone like me, and there's 4 of us out here. I want to be one of those 2. And if it's a prove-it deal for a guy who's pretty good and just wants at-bats, and it's a 1-year deal, everybody wins. You get him on a 1-year deal for $6-7 million bucks, like Gary Sanchez this year. And then the player gets 400 at-bats. If they put up numbers, they're going to get $50 million next offseason. That's what they want.
Now, I think with the Hoskins deal, the Brewers, at the time they signed it, they said, we'll give him $18 million for a second year. Then he had a less than spectacular year, still hit his home runs. Probably could have hit more had he been healthy. But I would have guessed the Brewers would have been okay had he opted out of that $18 million.
Probably, but here's what I think is going to happen here. I think the year we thought we were getting out of Hoskins this past year, I think we're going to get that in 2025 because you're right. I don't think he was totally healthy with that knee. He looked pretty rough at first base at times, the agility, but he can still mash. And I think he'll be healthier this time around. And this is really it for him. This is the last chance in his career to truly prove he can hit 35 home runs, be an 800 OPS guy. And he's got it in him. I mean, that guy can hit. He just wasn't quite himself last year. So I actually think the Brewers make a better bang for their buck out of the $18 million that they're going to pay him this year than what they got last year. I think the guy we all thought we were going to get last year, they're going to get. Prediction here, I think he has a very good year.
I think you're right on that. It just was odd to see a guy of his caliber, and I bet you it never happened to me him in Philadelphia, at least after maybe his rookie year or so, that Bauers pinch hit for him. I know it's a lefty-righty thing. Bauers ended up hitting the home run. But how many times has Rhys Hoskins ever been pinch hit for in his career?
Yeah, I think he was struggling health-wise, but also endurance-wise. We forget these are not, I always say on my show, these are not fantasy baseball players. They're humans. Yeah. And Rhys Hoskins didn't do anything for 18 months. And he's now playing at the highest level of a professional sport. I think he probably wore down late in the season. His body just wasn't conditioned to do that. But it was odd, at the end when he was losing at bats to guys he should not have been losing at bats to. But I think first base will be his. He's probably more of a DH, to be honest. But Bauers, is not going to be back this year. And I think he's going to get his ABs. I think he'll be a little more conditioned physically and mentally to play a whole season where he's totally in it. And I think 35 home runs is going to be the case this year. He'll strike out a lot. He won't hit for average, but he'll hit home runs. And that OPS, I bet, is up around 800. And then he'll get his money.
He'll get his money, and not with Milwaukee.
Yeah. He'll be motivated, too. Motivation is a strong part of this equation with these guys. So I think they get a much better year out of him.
You said something about the fantasy. baseball, these guys aren't fantasy players. Adam McCalvey reminds me of that all the time because I'll go to him at the game. We're sitting in the press box and I say, geez, yeah, why isn't this guy in the lineup today, man? Why? I mean, come on, just because it's a day game.
Mhm.
And he always tells me, Chuck, this isn't 1985 anymore. These guys need their days off. They're not playing every day. Johnny Bench isn't catching 162 games anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Once Yadier Molina retired, that was the last of the Mohegans there. No, they're not. And, I think some guys are wired to do it, especially, we saw what Contreras did last year, and Willie Adames didn't want to sit. But I think once you hit 30 years old, you can still be a great player, from 30 to 35-ish. But at that age, you can't push your body too much. And especially, again, with Rhys Hoskins coming off an injury where not just the injury, but the fact that he was inactive as a baseball player. It's hard to go 162. So I think, Adam's right about that. It's listen, I grew up in the 80s too, and I still complain about it, honestly, why these guys sit out so much.
Yeah.
But especially the older players, you got to give them their rest and understand they're not fantasy baseball players. You're not plugging, a guy into your fantasy team. There's a human element to this.
John Pappadopoulos, ESPN Lacrosse afternoon show, the sports lead, joining us. We're coming right back. I want to ask you about Pat Murphy wins Manager of the Year. What's the shelf life there with Pat Murphy as manager of the Brewers? We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. And, of course, Locked On Brewers. A lot of great sponsors out there. But, man, FanDuel is a terrific sponsor of Locked On Brewers. FanDuel, if you haven't gotten a game yet, you need to check it out. They're America's #1 sports book for a reason, FanDuel. They got the great bonuses. I told you at the top about the bonus that if you win your first $5 bet, you're going to get $150 in money added right into your account. And on the NFL, if you like the live bet, that is the place to go. You get a hunch in the middle of the game. You check out their live stats, and you view that live play-by-play. So much more on the same page where you place your bets. Let's say your team gets down 7-0, a heavy favorite. You want to go on, let's say, the Packers or whatever. Well, go to FanDuel.com, check out their live stats, their live play-by-play, and their live betting. FanDuel.com. Join up today. You'll get started, again, for new players, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. But you got to win your first $5 bet. Easy. $150 added into your account. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. We're the #1 Brewers podcast out there because of you great Brewers fans out there. And also, you get us on YouTube, our growing YouTube page, which is Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers with John Pappadopoulos from ESPN Radio and Lacrosse. He is the host of the Sports Lead in the afternoon. God's country up in Lacrosse. Man, that is one of the beautiful parts of not only the state, but of our country. Murph wins Manager of the Year. I was on a rampage earlier this week, first of all, John, because earlier this week when those ballots came out, I had to call out a couple of guys because he should have been unanimous Manager of the Year. There were 3 guys who didn't vote for him for Manager of the Year. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll take 27 out of 30. I was slightly worried that it might be closer than that. I figured he'd probably win it, but I just the national media operates a certain way, and you're always going to have a few outliers who just have a preference. But he certainly deserved it this year. I didn't think it was particularly close, and I think I said this on my show before, Chuck. If you go back to the beginning of the season and go look at the Vegas odds that were out there and some of the analytics models, all of them had the Brewers winning about 79 games. 77 to 79 was kind of the range. They won 90 plus, and really they had the division locked up 3 weeks before the season ended. And I keep saying this as well. The run differential was the best in baseball at one point right around Labor Day, around the time they locked up the division. So they weren't just winning close games and sometimes in baseball you have that scrappy team that's not that good, but they're winning one-run games and catching a break here or there. The Brewers had the best run differential very late in the season, better than the Dodgers, better than a lot of teams out there. So Murphy did a great job. He did most of it without Devin Williams this year, who only pitched, the second half of the final third of the season. He did it with a lot of young guys. And I think the biggest key for Pat Murphy was he was open-minded about, listen, of course analytics matter, but I'm not going to manage this team robotically. We're going to put some heart and soul into this thing. He realized he had a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism, a lot of youth, and he let guys be athletes. He let Sal Frelick be an athlete. He let Garrett Mitchell be an athlete. He let Jackson Churio, go out there and be an athlete. He let Bryce Terang, who might be the best athlete on the team in terms of being able to run and field. He let these guys be athletes, and he did not paint them into an analytics box. And I think it worked. The fact that Terang stole 50-plus bases, the fact that I think guys felt like they were enjoying playing, which might be a fairly simplistic thing to say, but I think it worked. There were times, Chuck, where I'd watch 7-8 games in a row and see like 3 hit and runs called in that window. And I'm like, I haven't seen a hit and run in a Major League Baseball game in 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And Pat Murphy's doing it multiple times, in the course of a week. So I think he let them enjoy the game. And, you play 162 of these things, the emotional, mental part of it matters. And I think he struck that chord really well with this young group of guys, and it worked.
65 years old or so, but relates to the young guys. There was some questions. They relate to the young guys, and I always hear that criticism when an older manager is managing. Well, he doesn't have the pulse of his team. He can't relate to his guys. This game related very well to his guys.
Well, you know what? It was almost the reverse of that, because if you go back 30 years ago, baseball had a certain style, right? Teams ran, they bunted runners over. It was more small ball. Well, I think now the 65-year-olds actually weirdly can relate to younger guys who might not want to be so robotic.
Yeah.
And at the mercy of analytics to that degree. I'm an analytics guy. I really am. But I think Murphy connected in that regard. And I also think the fact that Pat Murphy was a college coach for 30 years at the highest level of college, it really helped him this year because of all the young guys on this team. Jackson Churio is the age of a college baseball player. Bryce Terang, Garrett Mitchell, Sal Frelick, those guys are a little bit older, but not much. So I actually think his college experience also helped him with this group.
Do you think he's here for a long run, or do you think he's still the manager in?
Yeah,
until
we had a long discussion this week on my show about this. Doesn't he seem like a young 65 to you?
Oh, he does.
His personality, even though he looks a little young for his age, he doesn't seem like a rundown, retirement age guy. He looks a little younger. His vibe is a little bit younger. I don't want to jump the gun too much on this and be at the mercy of the moment, but I do think there might be a 4 or 5 year window where maybe he's just the guy now, and Ricky Weeks has to wait. What's wrong with that? Ricky Weeks is a really young guy, and he probably would benefit with 4 or 5 years under Murphy and really learning the nuances of managing a baseball team if Ricky's the next guy after this. But I think so. Now, if they go out and win 80 games next year and miss the playoffs, maybe then the conversation turns to, all right, Murph had the one good year, but now he's 66. Let's give Ricky Weeks a shot. But my gut feeling is I think Atanasio likes him, front office likes him, and he doesn't come across as an older manager who's kind of hanging on for a year or two. I think he can do this for a while.
That's my thing is if he slips a little bit next year, the team slips, not him, but the team slips to, let's say, 81 and 81. Will there be rumblings about, hey, let's get Ricky in there?
Yeah. What do you think he's bought himself a couple of years, or maybe one mediocre year with what he just did?
What's amazing here is he wasn't. He was given the old courtesy interview that they always owners and general managers will always give somebody on their staff. The old courtesy interview. Rarely do those guys get the job. So I'm wondering if in the back of their minds, if the Brewers, and they won't tell us this, if that front office will say, well, Murphy's our guy from right now. Nice story. He did better than we thought. We'll keep him in there until, but I feel like they have Ricky as their future manager.
I do too, but I also think that Ricky is probably not quite at the level that Craig Counsell was right before they hired him in terms of experience.
No.
Craig Counsell, was he in the front office for about 3 years or 4 years before he got the manager job?
It wasn't that long because
was it less than that?
Yeah, it might have been. I think it was less than that. He was like a special assistant.
Yeah,
whatever that role is.
I think they kind of fell in love, and they were also a little more desperate then too. The organization was really struggling, and he was kind of the perfect guy at the right time. But I think seasoning always helps, especially when you're going to hire a guy eventually as your manager. And Ricky, I don't know Ricky's exact age, but he's probably younger than we think. Because he was so young when he got into the big leagues, and retired, at a normal age. But 35 is young in real life. It's old for a baseball player.
Well,
check it out. But I think Ricky is at an age right now where another 2 or 3 or 4 years is not going to hurt him to get some seasoning, and kind of learn from Pat Murphy. And you know what I think Ricky's going to learn a lot from Pat Murphy is the personality part of the job. I think with Counsell, you're going to learn the tactical part really well. I always thought Craig Counsell ran the bullpen pretty well. Back when pitchers hit, nobody handled the double switch better than Counsell. Counsell knew how to kind of like keep a clubhouse down a little bit, like even keeled. Yeah. But I think the humor that Pat Murphy has, I think that unique vibe, that he brings. I mean, you cover him every day. He's a different cat. He's funny. Yes. I think Ricky will get something out of that too. Okay, that's part of it too. You got to keep a clubhouse loose at certain points. So my over under on this is 3 or 4 more years.
What would you guess? What would you guess Ricky's age is?
All right. Oh boy, I know I'm getting older. I'm going to say 39 years old.
42.
Is he? Okay. Yeah. But you know what? Even that's pretty young for a manager. It's doable. I mean, a lot of guys start managing around that age or younger, but he could do this till he's 45 and really become seasoned,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, he could. He'll be 43 in September, so he'll turn 43 during the season. All right, Pop, hang on for a second. John Pappadopoulos from ESPN Radio and Lacrosse. When we come back, we'll ask him over and under on 93 wins, which the Brewers won last year. That's coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game Time, that's where I get my tickets on Game Time. If you're going to a Bucks game, maybe a Marquette game, maybe you want to go out to a concert, plays, whatever. They have all the tickets on Game Time. What you need to do is you go download the Game Time app. You hit the seat that you want. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it. All in pricing. Toggle in that feature on all in pricing because you won't get any surprises at the checkout counter. The lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the discount. They got the best ticket coverage out there, the most flexible customer service policy. But you got to download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase at Game Time. Again, create an account, use that promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You pay $80 for tickets. Well, when you check out, it's going to cost you $20. They'll knock $20 off. You can download the Game Time app. Again, Bucks tickets, Marquette, Wisconsin, any type of event, whether it's a sporting event or a theater or a concert or a comedy show or whatever, it's all there. All the seats on Game Time. But again, you download and you create that account, Locked On MLB for that promo code, $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is Game Time. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. John Pappadopoulos taking some time off the pending Thanksgiving holiday to joining us here on Locked On Brewers. He's from ESPN in Lacrosse. All right, you mentioned the over and under during the regular season, 76, 79, or whatever it was. 93 over and under, John. If someone said that to you, what would you take?
I take the under. I just think it's a laws of probability thing. It's hard to win 93 or more. I think this team could be just as good, if not better. But sometimes you have a better team and lose more games. You get a couple bounces that don't go your way, or a big injury hits at the wrong time. My guess would be that they win closer to 89-90, but I also think you could win this division with that. And I also think this could be a better playoff team than the one we just saw. If Devin Williams does come back, you get a full season out of him. But let's say he doesn't. Let's say Devin Williams gets traded. I think the potential improvement for some of these young guys is almost going to create, a different sort of lineup. Jackson Churio might go from being an exciting young player who's kind of up and down to being an all-star this year. And none of us would be surprised if he hit 30 home runs and made the all-star team this year. If Garrett Mitchell stays healthy, there's some pretty serious talent there. I could see him being a 2020 guy, being an elite defensive center fielder, being great on the bases and even being, a fringe all-star himself. I think Frelick I think there's a little more meat on that bone too as a hitter. I don't know if Frelick is ever going to be a great hitter, but Sal Frelick, I think, I know it was the one home run he hit in the playoffs, but if he changes his approach a little bit, I think you've had Jack Stern on your show before. Maybe, I can't remember if you have or not, but Jack does a great job with analytics. He's the best there is. And he wrote a really good piece about Frelick's swing and how, if he does change his approach a little bit, he could be a 10 or 15 home run guy maybe, So between Frelick getting better and continuing to be a Gold Glove outfielder, Garrett Mitchell has major potential if he stays healthy. Jackson Churio could be a top 15 player in baseball. I mean, that's like 3 new players, even though it's the same 3 guys if they get that. If Bryce Terang can just match what he did last year, he's probably going to be an all-star because now he's got a rep. Now he's a Gold Glover and, he's got a little bit more of a reputation. So I think Ortiz could be a little bit better too, and he could be really good defensively. So they might be a better team next year and win less games. And I do think the starting pitching is going to be better. I think Savali is going to be quietly, you forget about him. And, by July, we're like, wow, Savali's, a really good number 3 or 4 starter in this rotation. Knock on wood for Brandon Woodruff. But if the shoulder checks out and he's 80% of what he was, you're number 2. Freddie, I think, bounces back and will be better. And I'm a big Tobias Myers fan. So I think the rotation's a little better. I think the lineup is better, not because you're adding anybody, but you simply just have guys who are going to get better. So I think 90 wins-ish, but I think they'll be better conditioned to do more in the playoffs next year with a little more veteran leadership, with guys being older and maybe better.
John Pappadopoulos, you get his show on 105.5, the Sports Lead in Lacrosse, ESPN Lacrosse, the Sports Lead, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6. John Pappadopoulos joining us here from the Sports Lead. And you don't have to live in Lacrosse to listen to him. You can hear him anywhere in the world through devices, online, everywhere, man. You don't have to be in Lacrosse anymore to hear John Pappadopoulos. Right. Hear him worldwide, right?
ESPNLacrosse.com. Yeah, check it out.
All right, John, have a great Thanksgiving, my friend. We'll talk to you after the year.
You do the same. Thanks, Chuck.
John Pappadopoulos joining us here on Locked On Brewers. That's going to do it for me, Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers. Thanks for making us your first listen every day here on Locked On Brewers. For your second listen, go to Locked On MLB. My guy Sully's got all the hot stove talk. Have yourself a great day, everybody. This is Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers.